the organization was having a healthy amount of churn, and they were trying to understand why they were having churn and what had to happen in order to change that. So by really diving into the churn data, we looked at a data set of every single customer that has left or churned in the last 18 to 24 months. Let's look at that data. One pivotal piece of information that we found was almost every customer that had churned with us within the first year of being with us had under 50% adoption of the product when it moved from implementation to customer success. So what we realized in that data with that information and that data was we need our implementation team to hold on to customers longer and not have your measure of success in the implementation team as time bound. Like it's a 12-week project. I've launched them, then they go over the fence to customer success. And instead, what it should be is engagement, like adoption and engagement bound. So we were able to work internally with stakeholders to improve that process where customers weren't shifted from implementation into customer success at that 12-week mark when the project had launched, but rather they stayed with implementation and kept getting training and kept getting adoption help. And then they were moved over to customer success once they reached a 65% adoption. So that was the first milestone that we needed to really evolve within the organization.
Spotlight, your new customer success soundtrack from the heart of Canada, brought to you by CS in Focus. Welcome to our podcast today at Spotlight. Today we're joined by Lindsay Lane, an accomplished customer success executive at Uverl, renowned for her innovative approach to customer journey development and success program involvement. Welcome today, Lindsay.
Hi, Emma. Thank you so much for having me here today. I'm really excited to be here and share my experience and my thoughts around customer success and the profession overall. As the director of customer success at Yavaro, my responsibility is overseeing the journey that our customers have from the time they walk into the door until year after year of renewing with us. And it's something that I take really near and dear to my heart, takes very seriously around how can we make sure that we're ensuring that our customers are realizing that value from our offerings? So yeah, I'm really excited to be here today.
Well, thank you for your time. Something you mentioned about customer journey. How do you define a customer journey in an organization? How do you start?
Emma, you're speaking my jam. So what I really love about working on customer journey work, and I've done it at a number of organizations, and the approach that I always take is the same, although it always has different results, slightly different results depending on your organization, your products, whether or not you're a B2B company or you're a B2C company. The approach that I typically take is really stepping back when you look at an organization, look at your products and your services, and then look at your customer base. So I typically and historically at the organizations I've worked at where I've had to redefine or create from scratch a customer journey is I've looked at the data to really tell me a story. So understanding not only the wins that your organization has had year over year with their customer base, but more importantly, the losses. So looking at churn data. So when you really dive into churn data and you analyze why did customers leave, what are the patterns that you can really extract from their experience and the data that you've collected will really help frame what journey or what happy path you want your customers to take. So there's twofold in there, right? There's your organization. You have an idea of what you want your customers' happy path to be. You understand where you want your customers to go from point A to point B. It's equally as important to understand, looking at data, what trends do you see that your customers wanted to take in their own happy path? And then what can you do to evolve the services and the processes internally and the product offering that you have? So I would say that really the core of that is understanding your customer data, understanding your happy path. What do you want your customers to do with your product and what steps do they need to take to get there, and then build out the processes to make sure that you can actually successfully get them there.
I see. Peter actually shared a post earlier about you can't analyze churn by just looking at churn. So how would you really analyze the churn
Yeah.
in the bigger picture?
Yeah, I'll give you a real life example. So, one of the past organizations that I work for, I was brought into the organization to really do just that. So, at the time, the organization was having a healthy amount of churn, and they were trying to understand why they were having churn and what had to happen in order to change that. So by really diving into the churn data, we looked at a data set of every single customer that has left or churned in the last 18 to 24 months. Let's look at that data, the usage pattern. How quick did they adopt? What was their adoption? What was their engagement patterns month over month? Did we have executive alignment? Did we have the right contacts at every single customer account? And one pivotal piece of information that we found was almost every customer that had churned with us within the first year of being with us had under 50% adoption of the product when it moved from implementation to customer success. So what we realized in that data with that information and that data was we need our implementation team to hold on to customers longer and not have your measure of success in the implementation team as time bound. Like it's a 12-week project. I've launched them, then they go over the fence to customer success. And instead, what it should be is engagement, like adoption and engagement bound. So we were able to work internally with stakeholders to improve that process where customers weren't shifted from implementation into customer success at that 12-week mark when the project had launched, but rather they stayed with implementation and kept getting training and kept getting adoption help. And then they were moved over to customer success once they reached a 65% adoption. So that was the first milestone that we needed to really evolve within the organization. And then from there, we had a number of other key pieces of the puzzle that we ended up calling strategic alignment. So it was a program that we changed a number of processes cross-functionally in the organization to improve the experience that the customers had with our organization, all with that eye of retention and renewal.
Yeah, I love how you move the implementation from time bound to actually adoption. That's really key about implementations versus onboarding. I think that's a little bit different. Maybe
Yeah.
Monica may argue about that.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. So we're going back to the happy path, right?
Hmm.
How do you drive that alignments across each team to
Yeah,
really?
it's a great question. And it speaks to what I mentioned before around having a really strong strategic alignment or a strategic alignment program at your organization, which is essentially someone driving the evolution and continued evolution of processes with the eye to value realization for the customer. So when you're thinking through how do you drive this cross-functional changes, it really comes down to having a strong individual who owns that program. So oftentimes at any organization, there'll be process improvements, there'll be programs that get off the ground, but there isn't an individual or a team owning the program. And that's very important. At where I was solely responsible for owning that program. So all the processes that came from analyzing data, needing process improvements, that sat within the customer success team, but I was accountable for that. That was my role. And so when I was looking at talking to product or talking to our implementation lead or talking to our data ops lead, what was critically important was that I was coming to the table with almost like a what's in it for them, very much like that WIFM statement or what's in it for me when you speak about customer success, leveraging that statement for myself to think through what is in it for the product executive, for example, to make the changes that I'm proposing we should make to processes that will help that executive. You know, as a product executive, your responsibility is to ensure that you are innovating, that your user experience is top notch, and that ultimately at the end of the day, your customers are utilizing your product. So knowing that I know what the goals of a product executive is, how can I make sure that I am conveying to them the importance of making changes and whether or not it's changes to processes or changes to the product or the UI, I need to come to the table prepared with data to back up what I'm asking, but also make sure that what I'm asking of them serves them and their goals as well.
Mhm. Yeah. So there's another thing about this year. I don't like this term, but do more with less. It comes to
Mhm.
prioritization. How do you drive organization change decide which one is a priority?
Yeah, I think that that's something like perfectly honest. I think everyone struggles with that. It's one of those things where if everything becomes urgent and important, then nothing is urgent and
Yeah.
important, right? So I think it really does tie back to what are the organizational goals? What are the critical points for your organization that you have to hit within the year or within the quarter? What is that goal that is the most urgent to your organization? And then look at what you're wanting to improve or wanting to evolve and align it to that common goal. And if it doesn't align to the goal, then it does need to be looked at as should it be reprioritized? There's also a fantastic leadership book that the title is escaping me right now that speaks to letting fires burn. And especially when you're in a rigid environment or an environment where you're doing more with less, or you're working in a startup environment where, every move you make on a daily basis is critical to the success of the organization. There are fires that you're going to have to let burn. And I think the golden way to really ensure that you're letting the right fires burn is always looking at what is that organizational goal? What do you need to accomplish in this quarter or the next quarter, and tying back your priorities to that.
Yeah. It's not just doing more or less anymore as well. Doing less with better. It's like
Yes.
you have to
Yeah,
do
absolutely.
less with more. To
Absolutely.
and make sure that more is, like you said, prioritized to what the organization's going. Yeah.
Yeah.
There's something I read last night. It's just about how with all the economics pressures coming on and so on come into prioritization. But there's things I would say like customer success is more like a long term game.
Yeah, I think that this does speak to even the evolution of customer success as a profession over the last decade. There's been a lot of confusion around, is customer success the same as customer service or the same as customer support? And there's this thought process of, especially in the earlier days, that customer success was a cost center. So really articulating to your organization that your team and your accountabilities and responsibilities are a revenue driver for the business will really make that pivot for everyone within the organization to understand the importance of customer success. Where you really are winning within your customer success team or business unit in your organization is when you can convey that you are not a cost center, you are a revenue driver. And I think really ensuring that everyone at your company, at the executive table, all the way down to every single individual contributor, understands that Gartner puts out year over year really great metrics and studies around the customer experience and customer success profession. And there was a study that was done back in 2020 with the Gartner Group, where they showcase that a commitment to customer experience from an organizational perspective can result in 25% increase in retention. So there's that Gartner Group quote that says 80% of your company's future revenue will come from 20% of your existing customer base. But not a lot of people cross functionally will recognize that in an organization. So as leaders in this profession, myself and my colleagues, it's our goal to ensure that we are showcasing the data and showcasing that proof to the organization that we are a revenue driver. And so with that comes the long game of the sustainability of our teams, the evolution of our teams, and the processes in which we are instilling cross-functionally throughout the organization.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Yeah.
There is another post about using NPS as a revenue indicator. What's your thought about this?
Yeah, so I definitely think that yes, in and of itself, while it is a very useful metric, and I do think that you could tie revenue and revenue predictions to NPS, what I have really enjoyed in my career and at one of the organizations I worked with in the early 2000s was we leveraged NPS with effort score. So in our findings with our customer base, and it was in a SaaS environment in our customer base was NPS on its own was great. You get whether or not you've got detractors, your passives, your promoters. They give good feedback in the anecdotes. But what was missing was the effort in which the customers needed to take to use your product and or work with your customers or sorry, work with your organization. So when we were able to pair NPS with an effort score survey, what we really uncovered was we've got some great promoters. We've got some good passive, good information, but our detractors, when correlating the detractor comments to the effort score survey that they filled out, we were able to increase operational efficiencies based on their feedback of how hard it was to use our product or how hard it was to work with our organization. So I do believe that NPS has a seat at the table for a revenue driver, but for myself and my preference, I would prefer pairing it with an effort score survey program to make sure that you're getting that full picture of whether or not you have passives or promoters in your customer base, but how they actually use your product and the effort in which it takes to use your product.
Yeah, I see. Because we want to go back to the happy path, right? It's like
That's
each
right.
each step of the way, and measure where we meet by providing value at each step of the way, not
Yeah.
just are you going to recommend this or not, right?
Yeah,
Okay.
you've got it.
I love when you talk about leadership. What style of leadership would you resonate with?
Oh, I love.
Describe
So
yourself.
yeah, like leadership is something I could talk about this for hours upon hours because I genuinely love leading and I love leading people. I love leading processes because leading doesn't necessarily mean you're leading people. You can have a key leadership role at any organization and be an individual contributor. But for me, I often look at Barrett's model of the seven styles of leadership and where I tend to, when I really look at myself and my positives, my negatives, the nuances in which I fall into for leadership, I would really say that I fall into whether or not it's the integrator and or that mentor leader. I really do believe in servant leadership. Like when I'm meeting with my team and I'm talking with my team, to me, I feel like it's my duty to come to the table every day like I work for them. What can I do for them? How can I help them in their career? How can they help me in my career? Like it's a two-way street, right? It's not just me leading them and them listening to me. I'm getting just as much from them as they are from me. And I really believe in leading with empathy and that servant leadership. I take that role most important above all else.
This is wonderful. I will share that link of the seventh style of leadership in our comments so everyone can see how it is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And one thing I will say as well about the Barrett model is that no one leadership style is right or wrong. If you look at when you share the post, every level, every one of those seven styles has a critical role within an organization and within a team. And sometimes you have to be the crisis manager, sometimes you have to be the integrator or the mentor or the visionary. And I think what makes a really good leader and the leaders that I have had that I have so much respect for have been able to call on pieces of themselves when they need to in every one of those seven styles.
Yep, it's about adapting to change and what's needed at the moment for the team. What book did you read and you recommend for leadership? Is there any
Oh my
particular
gosh.
book?
Yeah. So I would say for leadership, I don't necessarily focus on, let me see if I have it. For leadership, there's two books that I would say, whether or not you're an individual contributor or you're a leader. So the two books I would say is this first one is Linchpin, Are You Indispensable? By Seth Godkin. My favorite mentor gave this to me. This book means a lot to me. Really and truly, what it speaks to is how can you come to work every day and really set yourself apart with your own unique qualities? I highly recommend this book to everyone, whether you're a leader or not. And the second book that I absolutely love is The Power of Moments. So this book speaks about the peaks and valleys of personal life, professional life, and the power that each moment has on you and what you can do with those peaks and valleys within your life, both professionally and personally. I highly recommend this book, The Power of Moments, because especially in today's economy and, like you said, everyone is doing more with less. How can you really look at those moments of joy and celebrate them? But then how can you also look at, those less than ideal moments when you're in like the pit of despair or the valley of despair? What learnings can you take from the moments that you are in those peaks and valleys to move you forward in a positive way? So these are two books that are very near and dear to me, and I highly recommend to anyone.
And it's come so timely as we're entering a new year,
Yes.
2024.
Yes, absolutely. There's a lot that you can, and with The Power of Moments, what I love about that book is it really makes you look at what you can learn from the quote unquote negative moments in your life. So, really reframing how you think about moments, whether they're good or bad, but what learning can you take from them? Yeah, it's a fantastic book.
Do you mind sharing what's your moments of 2023 with us?
Oh my
One of
gosh. Yeah. So my moments of 2023, I would say, are working in Yavaro. Our mission is to help individuals find career success. And so these really special moments to me in this year have been those customers, we call our customers members, those members that we've worked with. They've gone from a hospitality bartender job where they're trying just to make ends meet, and now they're working as an account manager and they're moving their way up to account executive. They dug their heels in, they did the hard work, and we were with them every step of the way. There's so many of those moments that have happened in 2023 that really fill my cup, because at the end of the day, when I put my head on the pillow, I want to make sure that I've made a difference. That to me says that I've done a good job. So if I can, rest my head at night on the pillow and say, I helped this person in some way, shape, or form, that to me shows me that I have meaning, that I'm giving back, and that there's meaning to the work I'm doing. And another key piece is, like most companies, we have had to pivot quick and be really sharp about it, and a number of pivot points in 2023. And I'm proud of the work that we've done to accomplish that. And, moving our business to a full subscription model, and, getting prep week for our new customers that come in, and really make sure that they're set up for success. Like, there's so many moments that have been like that where I can really be like, yeah, we did that. We're helping people. Like, that's just a kick-ass feeling.
what would you like to do more in 2024 that you
Mm.
want to improve, or one
I
thing you want to
think,
keep doing?
yeah, the big thing that I would love to do in 2024 is continuously hone in on our customer journey. So your question when we started was so relevant to the work that we're doing today at Yavaro, as we continue to dive into what our subscription model looks like, what we can do for our customers. We're also entering this fantastic path of working with unique partners. And so I really want to continue to evolve our customer journey, both for our members, our individual members, but also for partners that we bring into work with us. How can we make their experience better? How can we knock the targets out of the park? And how can we make sure that we are giving back to our communities and to those individuals that are part of our community, even in a much richer way? And then another key piece is really looking at what we can do for internally, like career. When we talk about our company, we talk about career success for our customers, but I also want to look at career success for all of us as well. So all of the people on my team, what can we do to level up, to evolve, to make sure that everyone can feel fulfilled and everyone can feel like they're really giving it their all. So at a glance, that's what I really want to dig my heels into on 2024.
I love partner success, member success, and also your team success. Not
Yes, you
just,
got it.
and that's pull back to the industry and customer success as professionals. What gap do you see right now?
From my perspective and what I see in trends in my own experience is the crucial point or the gap is really having a lack of understanding around value realization, that model of value realization. What does value realized for your customers mean? And then how can you make sure that value realization is a living, breathing thing across your entire organization? So often in companies, when you look at the success of a customer and are they hitting their goals and are they hitting their targets to then get them to renewal, so often that is viewed as a customer success siloed problem, right? But it's not. And if you can anchor your team and your entire organization on the thought that they all have a role to play in making sure that your customer realizes value, that will change so much thinking from the organization standpoint to really break down those silos, because that is a gap that I see at every organization that I've worked at, where it's almost like, well, if your customer's hitting the goals, that's a CS problem. Not really. It's a company problem.
Mm-hmm. Yes. Is churn a CS metrics or company metrics?
You got it. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I believe it should be a company metric, personally.
The same with NRR. Do you think that's a CS metrics or
That's a good
company country
one.
metrics? Yeah.
I think there's a seat at the table for like organization wide for NRR to be a target for everybody to some degree. I think some teams would have more than others, but I do think that it is a company challenge. Whether or not it's a company win or a company challenge, I don't believe that it should sit just with a siloed team. All good.
I was actually asked last week, do you think who owns the customer?
That's a great question. So I believe that customer success owns the customer relationship, that they ultimately own the accountability for the success of the customer. But every business unit within an organization has a role to play in that success. So ultimately, I do believe the accountability of the relationship is with customer success. However, it's very important for product or engineering, research and development. It's very important that they have a seat at the table of understanding the customer, because that's what's going to drive evolution of a product.
What kind of data optimization would you focus on? We talk about engagement.
Yeah, absolutely. So adoption of the product, milestones within adoption. So what, after 30, 60, 90 days, what milestones have your customers achieved to get their adoption and that habit forming, right? You need those habit loops to use your product. But then you're looking at event tracking. So login details. How many times do someone log in? When do they log in? What device do they use to log in? How are they engaged? What part of the product do they engage the most with? And then everything right down to how many times do they need to leverage support? How many times do they leverage their CS manager, for example? Those are all those key events to track to really understand the full picture of your customer. That gets you to a health score, to have a really sophisticated health score to be able to predict the health of your customer. So when I talk about the data and making sure that the data architecture is crisp, so that you can be served this data as a CS manager to then understand the health of your customer. Those are the key pieces that I myself really hone in on.
That's great. But you said you're moved to a subscription base. What kind of challenge and customer experience that you had to solve when you move it to a different model?
Oh, for sure. So I think that the big piece of the puzzle when you have a subscription product is making sure that your customers understand what they have. So again, you speak about a happy path. If you have a subscription, you and I are both have a subscription for an organization together. Like, what do we know that we have at our fingertips and how can we leverage it? So when we're talking about that happy path, you need to make sure that you're guiding your customers down the path that you want them to, so they see value at the end of that subscription. So making sure that you have a tight in-app experience, with nudges and alerts so people know what to use in their product, when and why they should use it. But then that is paired with a really strong, communication, like email communication campaign. Because if your customer doesn't know what they have to leverage within their subscription, they're either going to leverage a whole bunch of stuff and be like, I don't really know, I'm all over the place, or they're going to leverage nothing. And then at the end of their subscription, they're going to be like, I didn't really use this. It's not really useful. So being able to be sophisticated enough to put prompts in place for your customers to understand the value of their subscription, what they get out of it, and when they should use certain pieces of the subscription is very key. And that was a big focus for this year, and will be ever evolving.
Yeah, I love how you say like when to use what part of the subscription.
Yeah.
Yeah. What is customer success 2.0 should look like?
I would say almost every company I've ever worked at in my profession, I've had so many challenges trying to get data. So what happens is other parts of the organization will see all the busy work that you're doing as a customer success team, but because you don't have a really crisp way to showcase the work you're doing, the belief is it's a cost center. But if you have a sophisticated, for example, I've used at a couple of organizations now a wicked tool called Mixpanel. Mixpanel is an event tracking tool. And so you have the ability to track everything that your customer is doing within your product, and the information that you gather from that, right down to, like, at my last organization, we were driving so much of our UX design on desktop because we were selling into home care providers. So we made the assumption that people would be on computers. Well, then leveraging our mixed panel data and really diving into the tracking, we were able to see that actually like over 80% of our customers were using mobile devices and tablets, to be exact. So then we were able to pivot our UX design to be mobile first and tablet first over desktop. If we wouldn't have had that information at our fingertips, we wouldn't have been able to make that pivot. So using that same example with a customer success team, like tracking your interactions, making sure that everyone understands how much time you're spending with customers. What is that customer's ARR? What is it worth to the organization? Like, if you can really pinpoint everything your team is doing back to data, that can showcase renewals and renewal or upsell or cross-sell opportunities. That's how you're going to shift the mindset from CS being a cost center to a revenue driver.
There's a post that you share about the luck surface area from
Mm-hmm.
Dr. Richard Wiseman experience. Do you mind to describe a little bit to our audience, and how do you apply this concept in your personal life?
Yeah, for sure. So this post really came to me by way of seeing someone else who shared it on LinkedIn. And what I found so fascinating about this was, to me, and this is not what the post necessarily said, but this is what I took away from it, was it's all about mindset. So there's all this luck surface area or luck factor to individuals, to your success, to your challenges. So thinking about that luck factor, that luck surface area, why do some individuals seem to have more quote unquote luck than others? And in the research that Dr. Richard Wiseman did with his experiment was looking at two sets of individuals who either leaned into opportunities or leaned out from opportunities. And my big takeaway from that was the importance of leaning in, because you don't know what you don't know. And you don't know when leaning into an opportunity can either propel you in a way you never thought was imaginable, or it's going to give you some really key lessons and learnings to take to your next adventure. So I likened it to very much like a fixed mindset versus growth mindset. If you're coming into every opportunity with that open mindset and leaning in versus letting that fear come in, be happy with the status quo, the more opportunities that you're going to be open to, the more luck surface areas you're going to be exposed to. So it's really whether or not you have the ability to have that growth mindset to be like, yeah, let's see what this opportunity can teach me, can show me.
I feel like it can go always tie back to the book you just introduced us to about the
Yeah,
valley, like coming out of the
absolutely.
valley, change your mindset to more opportunities? How do you take this moment to learn
Yeah.
and grow? Yeah.
Yeah. And I even tell, like, when you talk about like fixed mindset, growth mindset, and what opportunities what you can learn from opportunities. Like I say this to my kids often, but it's you can use it in every aspect of your life, which is when something happens that is less than ideal, instead of saying, why is this happening to me? Say, what did this teach me? It's very hard to do. Like, it's easy to say in practice, but when you're in that pit of despair, it's very hard to think that way. But I think if you can change your mindset to think about, what is this experience right now teaching me, you will change your mindset to get quickly out of that pit of despair and then be able to lean into more opportunities.
I love that. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Is there anything you would like to share with the audience as closing off this podcast?
I think the big thing that I would love to share is, well, one, I love this. This is great, Emma. Thank you so much for this. I've enjoyed, I can talk about CS forever. My big takeaway would be, to those who are either new in customer success or those who are looking at whether or not they should get into customer success, the big thing that I would say is make sure that you truly understand the accountabilities that a customer success individual has. Make sure that you understand the core competencies that you really need to exude as a professional in order to be successful. Oftentimes I'll hear the old school thinking of like, oh, customer success, so you just own relationships, right? So you like take people out for dinner and you just like make sure they're happy. And there's so much more to customer success management that is rooted in data and rooted in really the hard, cold facts of numbers. So if you're looking to get into customer success, make sure that you really spend the time, not only on the competencies that you would assume you need, like drive, performance, persuasion, communication, collaboration, but really take the time to understand the importance of data, data architecture, and your influence leveraging data.
All right. Well, I think that comes to the end. And thank you so much, Lindsay, for joining our podcast today.
You're welcome. This was a blast. I'm happy to come back anytime. Love talking about this. Love talking about CS and the world and all this great stuff.
What's the best way to contact you if anybody has questions?
Yeah, absolutely. Please, please, please reach out to me on LinkedIn, ask to connect with me on LinkedIn. I love to just send me a note. And then I'm also happy to share my email address to connect. I love meeting new people, and you never know what opportunities will come from meeting new connections.
Thank you, Lindsay.
Thank you so much.
Wherever we go, we always have CS in focus. Thanks for listening. And don't forget to check out our community at csinfocus.com. If any topics you'd like to explore further, let us know.